Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are taking on a pretty big one, the anatomical foundation of our entire nervous system below the neck, the spinal cord.
It's a huge topic.
It is. We've cracked open one of the most authoritative textbooks out there, Gray's Anatomy, and we're zeroing in on the foundational chapter dedicated entirely to this structure.
And our mission today really is to build a mental model of it. We're not just listing parts. We want you to be able to, visualize its external shape, its internal layout.
The gray and white matter.
Exactly. And then map out those massive data highways, the ascending and descending tracts that connect everything.
I kind of think of the spinal cord as this highly sophisticated hybrid system.
How so?
Well, on one hand, it's like a brilliant autonomous regional manager. It handles all the immediate stuff for the limbs and trunk, all those unconscious reflexes.
Right. But on the other hand, it is the highest volume superhighway in the body. It's that non-stop two-way link for the brain to monitor everything and issue commands.
And the whole system, the entire thing, is built on a segmented foundation. That's crucial.
It is. 31 pairs of spinal nerves.
Right. 8 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, and that one tiny coccygeal pair.
And every single function, every sensation, you can map it back to one of those segments. That's the first step to clinical diagnosis. If you know where a nerve exits, you know what's affected if there's an injury.
So let's start with the geography. If we were to, picture the cord itself, where does it start and end?
Okay, so it begins right where the brainstem ends. It's continuous with the medulla oblongata just below that big opening at the base of the skull, the foramen magnum.
And it runs all the way down.
Not quite. It runs down to about the L1 or L2 vertebra, and then it tapers into a sharp point called the communis medullaris.
But it doesn't just float there, right? There's an anchor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
From that cone, the thin little fibrous strand, the phylum terminal, goes all the way down to anchor everything to the coccyx.
So it can't, ride up and down when you bend your neck.
That's the idea. It keeps it stable.
Now, externally, the cord isn't just a uniform tube. You see these two big bulges, the cervical and the lumbosacral enlargements.
And that's a perfect example of structure dictating function.
100%.
They're not just thicker for no reason. They're packed with extra gray matter, extra neurons, because that's where all the wiring for the arms and legs originates.
Huh.
More complex machinery requires more hardware.
Okay, let's slice it in half. A cross-section. What's the internal layout?
So first you see the big divisions. There's a deep groove in the front, the ventral median fissure, and a shallower one in the back, the dorsal median sulcus.
And that separates the two main tissue types.
Right. You get that central sort of butterfly or H-shaped core, that's the gray matter, and it's surrounded by the outer shell of white matter.
And just like you said with the enlargements, that gray H is absolutely huge in the cervical and lumbosacral regions.
But here's the counterintuitive part. The white matter, which is all the fiber tracts.
The highways.
The highways, yeah. That's actually thickest up at the cervical levels.
That seems backwards. Why is the traffic jam at the top?
Well, think about it. At the top, you have all the ascending fibers from the entire body, sacral, lumbar, thoracic, all passing through on their way up. And at the same time, all the descending motor commands from the brain are passing through on their way down. It's the point of maximum data flow.
That makes perfect sense. And right in the middle of that gray H,
there's a tiny little hole, the central canal. It's a remnant of the neural tube, and it's filled with cerebrospinal fluid, CSF.
Let's zoom in on the H itself. The horns. We've got dorsal horns and ventral horns.
Yep. The dorsal horns point towards your back, and they are purely sensory. They're the welcome mat. All the incoming sensory data from the body stops there first.
And ventral horns.
They're thicker, they point towards your stomach, and they are purely motor. That's where the big motor neurons live that actually send signals out to your muscles.
And there's a third one, a little side sprout that's only in certain places.
The lateral horn. You only see it from about T1 to L2, and it's a huge clue to function because that's where the cell bodies for the sympathetic nervous system live. The whole fight or flight system kicks off right there.
Okay, let's decode that gray matter even more. It's not just a shape, it's layered. This is where Rex's laminae come in.
Right. Rex's system is basically a functional map. It divides the gray matter into 9 zones, Laminae through IX. We can focus on the big ones.
I want to start where sensation first arrives. The dorsal horn.
Okay, so you need to look at Laminae I and II. Lamina III is famously called the substantia gelatinosa. These two layers are the primary sorting station for pain and temperature.
So if you touch a hot stove, the signal lands there first.
That's where it lands.
Which means if the brain wants to turn down the pain, that's where it would send the signal.
Precisely. They are the main target for our descending pain control systems. The brain sends things like serotonin and natural opioids right to Laminae II to literally inhibit the pain signal before it even gets a chance to ascend.
It's like a volume knob built right into the cord.
A perfect analogy.
Okay, moving forward into the intermediate zone, Lamina VII, what's in there?
Lamina VII is complex. It's got the autonomic center we mentioned, the intermediolateral nucleus, but it also has a crucial sensory relay station called Clark's column.
The Clark's column.
Yep, also T1 to L2. And it's vital because it gives rise to the dorsal spinocerebellar tract. That's all about unconscious proprioception, knowing where your body is without looking.
Then we get to the powerhouse in the ventral horn, Laminae I.
This is where the big alpha motor neurons live. They're the ones that connect to your major muscles and create force. And you also have the smaller gamma motor neurons, which are for muscle tone and fine-tuning.
And the layout in Lamina I isn't random, is it? It's like a little map of the body.
It's a very clear map, a somatotopic organization. Think of it like this. Neurons that are more medial, towards the center, control your axial muscle.
Use your trunk, your posture.
Exactly. And the neurons out laterally control your limb muscles. And even there, the ones on top, dorsally, control your flexors, and the ones on the bottom, ventrally, control your extensors. It's a beautiful wiring diagram.
It's incredible. So before we leave the gray matter, you hinted at something earlier, this idea of inherent intelligence. Central pattern generators.
Yeah, this is a really cool insight from the source material. We tend to think the cord just takes orders from the brain.
Right.
But embedded in the gray matter are these neural circuits, CPGs, that can generate rhythmic movements like walking or swimming on their own without constant input from the brain. The cord has its own routines.
That completely reframes its role. It's not just a cable.
Not at all. It's an active participant.
Okay, let's follow the data moving through the white matter now. We have the dorsal, lateral, and ventral funiculi, which are just bundles of tracts.
Right. And when we talk about the ascending, the sensory tracts, you have to know the two golden rules. It's all about the high crossers versus the low crossers.
High crossers versus low crossers. Okay, let's start with the high crossers.
That's the dorsal columns. The fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus.
And their job is?
They carry the high-fidelity information. Conscious proprioception, vibration sense, fine discriminative touch, precision data.
And how do they run?
They are the express lanes. They enter the cord and shoot straight up on the same side, ipsilaterally. They don't cross until way up in the medulla oblongata.
So a key clinical point. If you damage a dorsal column, the sensory loss is on the same side of the body as the injury.
Exactly. And within that column, gracilis is medial and carries info from your lower body. Cuneatus is more lateral and carries info from your upper body. It's stacked logically.
Okay, that's the high crossers now, the low crossers.
The spinothalamic tracts, functionally, they're the opposite. They carry crude stuff, pain, temperature, coarse touch.
Survival sensations.
Right.
Yes.
And mechanically, they do the exact opposite of the dorsal columns.
They cross immediately.
Promptly. Within about one segment of entering, they cross the midline in the ventral white commissure and then ascend on the opposite, the contralateral side.
Okay, so here's the clinical question. If you damage the left side of your spinal cord, you lose pain and temperature sensation on the right side of your body.
Precisely, because those fibers already crossed over. And this also explains referred pain. A neuron in your thoracic cord might get signals from both your heart and your chest wall. The brain gets confused and interprets heart pain as chest wall pain.
Viscerosomatic convergence.
Got it.
And quickly, what about the tracts talking to the cerebellum for coordination?
The spinocerebellar tracts, the main one, the dorsal tract, is simple. It runs up ipsilaterally from Clark's column. But the ventral tract is famous for being the great double crosser.
It crosses twice.
It crosses at the spinal level, ascends, and then crosses back again before it terminates. Functionally, it's still ipsilateral, but anatomically, it's a mess.
Okay, that's the sensory data coming in. Let's switch to the descending motor highways.
All right. The absolute king here is the corticospinal tract. This is for conscious, voluntary movement. It starts in the motor cortex and forms those big pyramids in the medulla.
And where does this massive system cross?
At the deusation of the pyramids, right where the medulla meets the cord, about 90% of the fibers cross there to form the lateral corticospinal tract.
Which is for?
Fine, skilled movements, especially of your hands and fingers. The other 10% stays uncrossed for a bit, forming the ventral tract for axial muscles, but most of those fibers cross later anyway.
So a stroke high up causes weakness on the opposite side of the body. But here's the thing. Initially, it's a flaccid paralysis, but then it becomes spastic. Why?
Ah, that's a great question. And the answer isn't just the corticospinal tract. It's about what happens to the other non-voluntary systems from the brainstem when the cortex goes offline.
You mean the vestibulospinal and reticulospinal tracts?
Especially the reticulospinal tracts. You've got one from the pons that's generally excitatory to your anti-gravity muscles, your extensors, and you've got another from the medulla that's generally inhibitory.
So it's a balancing act.
It's a constant balancing act. When you have a stroke, you lose cortical control over that system, the balance is thrown off, and you get this uncontrolled facilitation from the brainstem. That's a huge driver of the spasticity and hyperreflexia you see.
Okay, let's put this all together. The classic clinical case. Brown-Séquard syndrome. Hemisection. Let's say you cut the left half of the cord. What happens below the cut?
This is the perfect test case. It confirms everything. Below the lesion, on the same side, ipsilaterally, you lose two things.
Okay.
Voluntary movement, because the corticospinal tract is a high crosser. And you lose fine touch and proprioception because the dorsal columns are also high crossers.
And what happens on the opposite, the contralateral side?
On the opposite side, you lose pain and temperature. Why? Because the spinothalamic fibers are low crossers. They had already crossed over to the damaged side of the cord to make their ascent.
High crossers fail on the same side. Low crossers fail on the opposite side. That's the logic.
That is the logic.
What about an injury right in the center of the cord, like syringomyelia?
Right, a central cord syndrome. The very first fibers to get damaged are the ones crossing the midline.
The spinothalamic fiber?
Exactly. They pass right through the center in that ventral white commissure, so they get compressed first.
And the result of that very specific damage
Is a loss of pain and temperature sensation on both sides, but only at the level of the lesion. The tracts running up the sides are spared initially. The classic sign is someone getting burns on their hands and not even feeling it.
Incredible. So to wrap this all up, what's the one mental picture you want people to retain from all this?
Okay, remember the gray H-core as the local processor with its functional zones like the pain gates in Laminae and VII and the motor maps in Laminae XX.
Right.
Then, for the white matter highways, just remember the two crossing rules. Dorsal columns for precision sense cross high in the medulla. Spinothalamic tracts for pain and temp cross low right at the spinal level. If you know that, you can diagnose almost any major spinal injury.
And for a final thought, we spent all this time talking about the cord as a messenger. But knowing about those central pattern generators, it really makes you wonder, how much of our movement is the brain micromanaging, and how much is just the spine running these incredibly advanced autonomous subroutines?
It forces us to see the cord not just as a pathway, but as an intelligent, integral part of the system itself.
Absolutely fascinating. Thank you for making this visualization so clear and accessible. We really hope this deep dive helps you understand the anatomical basis of clinical practice.